you've heard anything about the slow march of global climate change, then you know this one phrase: this issue affects us all. But with an issue big enough to affect an entire planet, does it really affect us all equally? Is there really no nuance there? Well, by viewing the issue of the climate crisis through the lens of class, the evidence points to the poor being far more affected than the rich. And through my research, I found three main areas where this is true. Those being in economic decline, in the effect of natural disasters, and population displacement due to sea level rise. Now, for us Americans, it might be a little easier to start close to home. Industrial decline is something that we're all familiar with, but it's not a universal concept. You see, according to Jay Roberts and Bradley Parks in their book, A Climate of Injustice, certain industries are going to get hit a lot more by climate change than others. Chief among those are tourism and resource extraction, things like mining or logging or farming. And those industries tend to be, according to them, and according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, very labor heavy and have very little capital investment. What that means is, in comparison to, on the other end of the spectrum, petroleum industries, there's a lot less money coming in per person working. And so, the workers tend to be very low income, and the people who profit tend to be those workers rather than big investors. Now, because of that, when the global climate crisis eventually gets to its peak, those industries and those people who would benefit from those industries are going to be hit a whole lot more than the wealthy in the countries where they occur. Now, pulling out a little bit to see a global picture, another very visible aspect of climate change is its effect on natural disasters. Now, you see, a team of researchers headed by Robert Mendelsohn at Yale found that when trying to observe economics in terms of climate, tropic climates tended to be poorer from the start. And according to another team working at NOAA and MIT, in their working paper laconically titled Tropical Cyclones and Climate Change, tropical cyclones like hurricanes and typhoons are going to worsen as sea levels rise and sea temperatures tend towards warming. Now, while this might have an impact on everybody in these tropical areas, as we all know living in Florida, the eventual impact is going to be that those tropical areas will be battered by worse and more intense storms over the years. And as we've just seen in the past few weeks with Hurricane Ada's impact on first Guatemala and Honduras, and then Florida and Louisiana, it gets a lot more media impact when a hurricane or a tropical cyclone hits a wealthy area than it does a poor area. Now, big natural disasters, your floods and your hurricanes, are going to get a whole lot more attention, but the slow encroaching effects of climate change are going to be the ones that have the largest impact overall on the poor. You see, according to Justin Warland, writing for Time in 2016, certain wealthy countries contribute in the top 20% of global emissions, while they are in the bottom 20% for risk. He calls these countries free riders. These are countries like the United States and Europe in the global north. But in the global south, and especially in areas like the Caribbean and the Central Pacific, there are countries like the island of Kiribati. Kiribati, if the climate warms to the point where scientists think it will now, will be completely underwater by 2100. Now, I don't know about you, but those countries, if you've ever been, are going to be the poorer countries that rely completely on those industries we discussed before, their tourism industries, their resource extraction. And combined combined with that sea level rise, those people are going to have to leave their homes, while people in the global north, in those countries in the top 20 and bottom 20%, those countries are going to have to take in those immigrants, and they're going to lose those immigrants are going to lose the national sovereignty they enjoyed, while the people in the global north, the wealthy, the middle class, are left with not a whole lot changed except for a little extra warming and a little higher sea level. Now, what does this all mean? This is an issue that we as voters and we as global citizens as a whole have to keep into account when we're making decisions, when we're electing politicians, when we're deciding what businesses to support. And in those areas of decline, in those areas of natural disaster and population displacement, while those issues will start in those poor countries, they will start to trickle back and affect the wealthy countries as those poor countries lose their sovereignty, lose their economies, and start to lose their populations. Because they're not going to other poor countries, they'll be coming to the developed countries. So I hope that the next time somebody comes up to you to talk about climate change, or you're casting your vote in November, that you think a little bit about those people who are less fortunate than